Hey guys, NJ here, and look what we have on the table. It's the Taranis X7. Very happy that this guy has turned up this morning. I did a quick unboxing of it over on the Patreon page, and we can now dive into looking at what this thing is all about. So I'll probably spread this over a couple of videos. First and foremost, aesthetically, I will say in person, I really like it. It feels really nice. It feels like a quality unit, considering its rather excellent price point. There are a few less switches on there compared to the X9D, which we're used to, notably the trim tabs which were on the side, which is absolutely fine if you use trim tabs for, in most cases that kind of thing would be used for flap settings on fixed wing aircraft, but I certainly don't know anyone in in our neck of the woods in the quad side of things that would ever really utilise those, so I certainly won't be missing them. One of the things that I noticed straight away when I went to pick it up, in terms of how I like to hold the transmitter, and I'm a pincher. I used to fly thumbs years ago. I then switched over once I started learning 3D helicopter stuff to pinch for more precision. It's just the way that I ended up going, and I really liked flying that way. And it was, as soon as I picked this up, it felt really comfortable to have these angled tops here to rest my middle fingers, and of course I can now move these switches quite easily. So I really like that. That's really accommodating. Of course that also works if you are using thumbs, having those up there. Those little ergonomic designs that are thrown in, they are, things like that just really make a difference. So already from a holding ergonomic point of view, this feels much nicer. Other things I've noticed, we have two rotary dials here. The first one on the left here does not have an indentation. That's absolutely fine with me. There are times where that might actually suit. For instance, I use my left rotary dial on my X9D as my volume control for the speaker, so that works. The indentation in the middle doesn't really serve any purpose to me. The one on the right does, so it's nice they've included both types there. These two switches here are all three-way switches, which is nice. You've got your standard, I know a lot of people use this as the arm switch, as a two-position switch, and then you've got your momentary switch up here on the top, which will return to its position, which can be used for a whole range of things. I use it for RSSI call-outs in signal strength, so I can flick that and just hear if I'm doing any kind of range test and I'm in the goggles. I flick that and get Amber to actually call that out for me, because obviously I can't glance down at my screen. One nice thing I can see straight away is this is a much beefier hinge and just a beefier aerial. This feels really solid compared to the X9D. The X9D, that was a real weak spot. So there's a nice solid metal hinge through there, and I quite like what they've done here with this kind of flat design here. It just all feels nice. It's good that there hasn't been any kind of real design carryovers. They've rethought all the different areas of this transmitter aesthetically, which is really nice. If I go to the bottom here, this was another thing while we're on the top. Actually, you can see they've now moved the headphone port. In fact, all the ports that were on the back have now moved to the top and the bottom, so we've now got the headphone jack coming out the top, and the trainer port also coming out the top, which is absolutely fine. And then down the bottom here, I'm not sure if I can angle this in a way that you can see, you've got the SD card slot there if you want to expand it. Now it does have a 60 model memory anyway built in, but if you want to expand it, or even pop your if you've got an X9D like me and you want to take the memory card out of that and pop it in here, transfer any models across, they are cross compatible, it will go straight in and work. You pull this away here and you can see that's where you'll be slotting that in. A little disappointed to see they've stuck with the old mini USB kind of big square plug. Does anyone still have these kicking around? I always have to, I've only got a couple of these cables and I have to keep ordering more because I just lose them, but I've got absolutely thousands of the micro USB connector, which most mobile phones will work off. So I would have liked them to update that connector, but fair enough, they've kept it the way it is. And then what they're calling the S port here on this side, so although there doesn't appear to be any kind of pins or anything down there that I can see. I'm going to open this up and we'll have a look inside. and see what's going on. Maybe we'll be able to shed some more light from there. Now moving around to the back, you have the same module bay as you would on the other Taranis, exactly the same size, so any modules you have that you want to put in there will go in there and work no problem. And then in the battery bay, now this does come, you see this will take 6 AA batteries. I think that's a great move. I mean, I travel quite a lot with my work, and it is great that there is an option like this, because if I'm out and about, it's one less thing to charge, one less thing to worry about. Just buy a pack of batteries and you can get those in pretty much anywhere in the world and chuck them in and you're good again. So that works great for me. Now this was quite an interesting thing. So this was supplied to me with many thanks from Banggood, and one thing that I had in the box with mine, which I was surprised to see, was in fact this guy, and I'm pretty sure most other people that have got theirs, maybe from other companies or other review units, certainly haven't been getting a rechargeable battery included. And I thought, you know, at first I thought it would be maybe just a Banggood battery and then being nice to me, but no, this is actually an FrSky battery. It's 800 milliamps, so not the highest capacity, but nonetheless there is a rechargeable FrSky battery in here. So this does come out, it does actually pull out, but it's easier to push out from the other side of the case once you open it up. We'll be doing that shortly. And the connector on here, now this connector, unfortunately I haven't got a way to charge this now, because I haven't got a connector like that in my charging loom, so I'll have to make one up, or so I thought anyway. Obviously there's no charge circuit on there, there's no, you know, charging port in there. There is no charge circuit. So as nice as it is getting a rechargeable pack, obviously it's kind of, you know, how useful is that, especially at a lower 800 milliamp capacity. If it was like a 2000 milliamp capacity, which you certainly could get in this 6L AA pack style nickel metal hydride, then, you know, it's possibly more feasible. But unless you make yourself up an adapter to charge that, there's kind of, you know, why not just stick with using some high capacity AA batteries. Now if you happen to have an X9D like me anyway, this connector is exactly the same as on the X9D. So what I can actually do is plug this into the back of my X9D and then charge this up using the X9D, because the X9D does have a charge circuit. So, you know, if you also happen to have an X9D, then there you go, that's one quick solution. And the design revisions just keep coming, it would seem. I've just test fitted this arm on here, and I use this, I usually attach my neck strap to this end one, because I like the transmitter to sit very flat, because I pinch. I like the transmitter tray to be very flat. I don't like it to be tilted up when I'm holding it. And with the X9D, this did have a tendency to rotate, which wasn't, you know, it wasn't annoying, it was just a thing that, you know, could be improved on. And you know what, look, they've improved it. They've actually, when you tighten this up, it's actually got a little notched section in here which holds that completely solid, so it's absolutely not rotating anywhere. And they've also increased the height of it away from the button, which was another complaint, because it was always tricky to get your finger in and actually turn the X9D power switch on. So they've actually made it so that there's plenty of room to get a thumb under there and turn this off and on. Anyway, enough of that, let's dive in and take these screws. There's only 4 screws to take out as opposed to 6 on the X9D. You've got 2 up here and you've got 2 just in these corners here, and then the back will pop off. Just a quick note, I love these rubber grips. It's definitely, the whole thing's definitely thinner, a little bit lighter, and these grips feel great from the other side. Top marks on the ergonomics, FrSky, really like that. Okay, let's get the back off. Okay, so screws removed, we can now take the back off, and it should just be a simple case of gently prying it upwards, which it is. And then I think we've just got this one connector here, which is the battery connector to this little block here. So let's just pull that guy out very carefully, so I don't want to damage anything. And there we go. And let's just move this out of the way for 1 second, and if we flip this over, you can see it is literally just the rear of the shell. And I believe we just push this and this should come out, and it does. So we've given that a little push, so there we go. There's our AA retainer there, little housing. That's all good, so we'll put that aside because I'll be putting in that rechargeable unit once it's had a charge. And we can put that to one side now as well, and let's have a look at the meat and veg of this this unit. So in typical FrSky fashion, everything is very nicely, neatly wired. All the wires are twisted up, which is always a good thing to see, keep the noise down. What I can see here, let's just start down at the bottom here. So you can see there is that SD card slot. There is the USB, which we've talked about. Now on here, I don't know if I can zoom in. So here we are. So you can see now this is the part that's labelled the S port, and well, what I can see here, you've got the ground, S port and 5 volts there, and it looks like that's meant to have a pin header in it. It hasn't, but that would be a right angle pin header. That would be pretty easy to actually put that in and solder in if needed. So that's no real biggie, but it'll be interesting to see what they intend to use with that. I certainly know when it came to flashing and upgrading my receivers, the way I used to do that was actually to use the external module, and I made up a connector and used this to flash my external, the external module pins here to flash my receivers. I don't know if you know that that was a possible thing, but it is, and it's a really easy way to upgrade your receivers if you need to, but maybe this is the way that will be preferable. So yeah, I guess we'll know more about that as we go. You can see there's a battery in here. We've got the haptic motor over here. That looks like it might be a slightly stronger size, bigger size counterweight on that than the one in the Taranis, which is the X9D, which is fairly weak. Whereas before this was kind of all one board, and if your RF unit ever went, it was unfortunately quite an expensive replacement because so much of that centre section was just all one board on the X9D. They've actually separated a few of these bits and pieces out now, so it might be, I'm hoping, that if you do happen to get into trouble here and your RF unit goes down, that this will hopefully be a less expensive unit to replace. You can see there is actually a connector here instead of being hardwired down like the X9D is. So the antenna is actually on a plug, and then it looks like they've put a bit of gunk on here just to hold it down, which is very wise. This connector in here, this little piece of plastic here looks very similar to the retaining piece of plastic that holds in the antenna, the plastic antenna on the X9D. So that should be fairly easy to remove should any of you guys want to upgrade this to a modular style system where you can screw in your own antenna, because some of you like to run like a 5 dBi antenna. Or some of those longer, greater strength antennas. So that's something to think about. Well, I mean, you can if you want. Personally, I'm not. I'm going to leave this just the way it is. Another thing definitely worth pointing out for any of you guys that like modding and pulling these things apart, it's really nice that the switches are all held in place, especially these top switches are held in place just on this front half. Because on the X9D, whenever you take the case off, it would be half held by the front and then half held by the back case. So you'd pull the case off and quite often these would fall out and you'd have to push them in and line them up and get everything back together. So it's just those nice little things like that. Again, little design adjustments that make these a move in the right direction. I really like the way they've done that. Also nice to point out here is these little cable tidies they've put here just to hold all the cables down. FrSky are great at making radios that are just, they almost encourage you to open it up and be able to work on it very easily, and I'm all for that line of thought. Great job there. Now another thing we should talk about is the fact that this does come, if I spin it over very carefully again, with 2 centered sticks. So where's the throttle? So it's not set up to be mode 1 or mode 2. What they've said here is, in fact, please open this up and decide whether you want mode 1 or mode 2 yourself, even though I think there's probably a lot more mode 2 flyers out there like myself than there are mode 1. Sorry, Paul and Thomas over at BMS Web, I know you're mode 1 chaps. Now when it comes to adjusting these gimbals, I actually made a mistake earlier. I've replaced 2 or 3 gimbals in the past. I don't know why on earth I thought this would be different in adjustment to any others, but I did read a post which suggested, which I just blindly followed, that you remove this spring here in order to turn this into a mode 2. And at first glance that did seem like the right thing to do. By removing that spring, you're taking away the ability for the lever arm here to recenter the stick, as it were, in the throttle axis. But of course that's not how gimbals work, and that's certainly not how the X9D gimbals work either, which I've adjusted many times, so it was kind of my mistake to assume that it would be any different. I got too caught up in all the redesigning going on, so thank you to one of my subs who pointed out to me that I'd actually got that wrong. What you actually have to do here, you've got this lever arm is the actual tension of it can be controlled with this screw here. So this screw is going to change the height of this post, and this post will therefore change the tension on this spring. So if you raise the height and increase the tension on the spring, this will become stiffer, and some people prefer that, and you can do that with every axis on both gimbals. If you prefer more tension on the gimbals, that's what you do. You take this post on the top of the spring and you would raise it. So what we want to do to actually get this to loosen off is to actually go the other way. So we want to loosen the spring right down. So the first thing we do is to take that, and we are going to turn it, I think, is it clockwise or anti-clockwise? No, anti-clockwise. So we're going to go anti-clockwise, and I think you can see that that spring is starting to get smaller and smaller. So we're going to keep turning that and get that right down, which has basically meant that spring is almost, you know, not creating any tension there at all now. And then we go over to the other side, and you'll see there's a screw here. Now this screw is going to make sure that that arm that is responsible for recentering the stick, in cooperation with the spring, that arm just sits down flat against the body and doesn't actually flap around. You can see me pushing it down there, so that's what this set screw will do. So we're going to grab that guy, and we're going to, and again I'm adjusting this for a mode 2. You'd be doing it on the other side in the opposite corner if you wanted to set this up for mode 1. So we are just going to keep going here until that's all the way down, and you can see now what that's done is that has made sure that that arm is completely sat nice and flat. There is still now a little bit of tension in that spring, so I'm just going to continue to lower that post a little bit more. Let's go the right way, that would help, by going counterclockwise. Sorry, that's not a great view for you there. And I think I'm probably at the limit there of how much I can loosen that. And now, as you can see, that has completely moved out the way and let go, and the rocker can go all the way down. The actual throttle can go all the way at the top and all the way to the bottom, and that lever arm there is not touching either of the 2 posts that would come into contact with it if this screw wasn't holding it down. So really you're just loosening off this spring enough. You don't need to go super crazy, but just enough so that that arm can sit all the way at the bottom. In fact, I could probably bring that back a bit. It's not really a massive thing, just so that nothing is too loose in there. But yeah, that is absolutely fine now. So you'll see you've got 2 bars here. You've got one with the indentation on it, and that, if you tighten this one down, that is going to give you that notched feel to the throttle stick. So that's entirely up to you. I actually quite like just the tiniest bit of notching to the throttle. I don't like it to feel completely smooth. I like it mostly smooth, but not too much. So in terms of getting the resistance and how you want the resistance, I usually start with this one. So this one will just control the resistance in that throttle. So I'm just going to start working that guy down. Right, so we've got a little bit of tension there now, and then we're going to take the second one down. Ah, there we go. Now I've got just a little bit, and that's probably spot on for me now. Once you've got the throttle tension right, you can also go ahead and just look at setting the tension for the other axes as well. So the yaw from left to right, you've got this. You can get probably a better view there. You can see the rocker arm and the spring working together to recenter this stick. If you want that tension to be greater, raise the height of this screw, raise the height of this post, putting this spring under more tension, so you go clockwise to do so, and that will make it, that will then give more resistance. And if you go counterclockwise, it will offer less resistance. So you can do that on both sides to get those gimbals to feel exactly how you want them. So that just about does it in terms of the internals. I will say I just have to reiterate how easy this is to work on, and you know, the X9D was an easy transmitter to work on internally, but this goes one step further. I think it's even easier. I mean, look, things like the digital trims on the other side here. Look, I mean, look how great that is. It's right there, 2 screws, and it's even got the plug sitting right there by it. Plug on either end, there's no soldering. I mean, they've just gone one step further to make this great, and it's all kind of on one layer and well separated out. There's not as many layers deep to get into certain parts. So yeah, as I said, it just shows that there's been some real thought into the redesign, and you know, that's just a big plus with me. So in terms of putting this back on, there is one thing that I would like you to be aware of. Now you can see the module pins on the back here. Now just don't go jamming this back on and think, yep, we're good, because I'll tell you what you'll do, you'll bend those pins. If you can see here, can you see this tiny super thin slot? Yeah, well, that's where these pins go through, and if you weren't aware of that, you got to put this on and go, why isn't this going down? And you easily jam those and bend them. So be very careful. I'm not sure I can do this whilst I'm looking down the camera, but it is you can hear the pins right now. It is actually quite tricky to see and line them up. I think I've got them. There we go. So with that done, you can see they're now through. But yeah, be super careful of that. If anything, I think they probably could have made that a little bit, made that just a tiny bit wider. But I guess they're trying to add a bit of support to those by doing this. So hey, there have to be some compromises, I guess. Okay, let's get this back together and have a look with it turned on.